This program is brought to you in part through funds provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Good evening and welcome to 7:30. Our guest tonight, the Honorable Senator Ernest F. Hollings, Democrat of South Carolina. And Senator, it's nice to have you with us again.
Nice to be with you again.
You've been identified as perhaps one of the leading proponents of the new Panama Canal Treaty. Let's begin with that. Why?
I think on the one hand, I am a member of the Commerce Committee. A new treaty was presented in 1967. You remember President Johnson had promised it. And former Secretary of the Navy, Bob Anderson, came before our committee at that particular time. And then more recently, here in August of this year, I led a group of senators down to the Panama Canal and the canal zone itself. So it's been a 10-year study for me, and having led the group and then having to report, in essence, I took a position.
Senator, it seems that somehow in the current discussions we are lacking some of the historical backing behind this renegotiation of the treaty. What provided the original impetus for coming up with a new treaty?
You're dead on target with respect to the need for a new treaty, because it has been historical in a developing situation, and we have led the development. You know, I guess in the turn of the century and everything else of that kind, our power was all vested in military might. But the only real power America has now is the moral force of its position. And since World War II and through Korea and Vietnam, we have sponsored self-determination, anti-colonialism, and we got rid of the Philippines. We returned, for example, Okinawa. We paid way more to obtain Okinawa, 10,000 lives, than we ever paid to obtain the Panama Canal, but we gave that back to an enemy, former enemy, Japan, rather than an always friend, the Republic of Panama. And so having 25 years now evolved and led the way, and even with the Suez Canal, when Egypt commandeered, nationalized the Suez Canal, we took the part of Egypt rather than England and France back 20 years ago. So now here in 1977, we have Jimmy Carter being inaugurated in January, and these Latin presidents setting back a day extra and visiting with him 11. And they came into the White House and they said, President Carter, President Lyndon Johnson promised, but he got bogged down in Vietnam and couldn't deliver. Said President Nixon got bogged down in Watergate. And he said President Ford promised, but he just didn't have time. Now we've been negotiating for 12 years. When are we going to get our sovereignty and control of our own country, the very thing that America stands for? And of course Carter said, well, we'll do something. We'll do our best and see. And the new thing that's been injected in an historical way that was not offered in 1967 is the Pentagon really came into the act for the first time and sponsored what we call Article 5 of the Second Treaty, guaranteeing in perpetuity the right militarily to go in and keep that canal open for free access to all the nations of the world. We also got a section in Article, Article 5 that says no persons of a nationality other than the Republic of Panama can go in and operate that canal or defend it. In other words, you can't get any Castro troops in from Cuba. After those things were developed and everything else, now the treaty has been presented, but it's really been an historical development where we not only built a country, but we built a people. They've got patriotism, the fundamental to the American character, just like you and I are proud of our country. They're proud of their country. Now, their pride is on self-determination and self-destiny. Our pride in the Panama Canal Zone issue has been on ownership of foreign territory. We just can't live that way anymore. We don't want colonialism, and that's exactly what is an issue here.
Well, were you suggesting earlier then that in saying that we have led the way, that our response to the cries of anti-colonialism were self-motivated rather than reactive?
Yeah, well, that's right. It's been certainly with respect to human rights, and I think that under Henry Kissinger, my regret in frustration all the time, you never knew what the foreign policy was. It was carried around in Henry's back pocket, and it was CIA, secret, super duper. That's why I like the initiative in the Middle East so much directly between Israel and Egypt. Well, now with President Carter, it's open, above board, for human rights. This is what America's been an inspiration. Years ago, Adlai Stevenson said when man had few rights anywhere, the Declaration of Independence proclaimed the rights of man everywhere. And he said as those words went ringing around the world, men with their eyes cast down and their backs bent cupped their ears and listened, and bit by bit straightened their backs. And he says, as 200 years ago we were the hope of all the world's oppressed, today that's the American inspiration. That's the moral force of our position. If we're going to have human rights, we've got to have human rights in the Republic of Panama.
And yet this very issue is one that has brought the Carter administration in for some severe criticism, the idea of a fluctuating human rights policy applicable in some cases and not in others.
Well, you can't make the world over overnight, and you can't make it over in your own image. And certainly it's going to be for the interest of the United States working. They talk about a dictator, for example. In Panama, let's talk about the dictator Park. We created South Korea. And that's our dictator we put there. Now, nobody's saying get rid of President Park. But if we got rid of him, we'd turn it over to communism. So how do you foster human rights? It's not a clear choice. We're trying to impose freedom and constitutional principles and civil rights and those kind of things in the Republic of South Korea. We're trying to do the same thing in the Republic of Panama. One of the best ways we can do it is get rid of the vestiges of colonialism, let them attain their own sovereignty. Let us give them the defense guarantee, because militarily, I laugh when my friends talk about blackmail. They don't have an army big as the South Carolina National Guard, certainly not as well equipped. They have no Navy, no Air Force. They haven't really threatened us. And this is what the Latin presidents really liked, because they could get the sovereignty back, eliminate the nationalism issue from the communist, from Castro people taking over down there, and at the same time be given that military guarantee by the only power strong enough in the Western Hemisphere to defend, namely the United States.
Senator, can we actually talk about imposing freedom on a country without, in the same breath?
It's got to come from within. I guess we spent 56,000 lives in Vietnam trying to impose freedom from without. You know, there's the difference. That's the lesson of Vietnam. People don't like foreigners in their country. The North Vietnamese, I don't like the way they imposed it. The Viet Cong, they had a good enough love of country to come scraggling through in black pajamas, and they didn't have any Navy, and they didn't have any B-52 bombers, but they kept coming, and coming, and coming. And there we were with flamethrowers and napalms and B-52 flights and the Navy up there and aircraft carriers and everything else, but we couldn't get the people to fight as hard and as determinedly and as courageously down there in South Vietnam as they did in North Vietnam. We had the equipment. We had the best fighters in the American soldiers, but to Vietnamize, you remember, and get them to take over in their own, we spoiled them, and they just didn't fight as hard. And as a result, we had to withdraw.
What assurance do we have then that the majority of Panamanians indeed favor this particular treaty? We keep getting mixed press reports that there is a mixed reaction within that country itself.
You can always, there's no monolithic. You get a mixed reaction right here in the United States. But the truth of the matter is they had a free election on October the 23rd. Torrijos said at that particular time, I want UN observers, I want observers from the colleges and universities of America and the free press to come in. And they all went down, and it was a totally free election. Senator Bob Byrd, our majority leader, has just returned this week from Panama. And he said he was amazed. He'd heard about this dictator and everything else of that kind, so he went around in crowds. And Torrijos at one time did have a little pistol on him, but he threw it away when one of the senators commented. And he shoved through crowds, and he went amongst the people and everything else. Now with political prisoners and a real dictator, they'd have wiped him out and gotten rid of him quick, running around with senators around the streets. He is a dictator, don't misunderstand. But in that sense, a popular dictator. This is the issue that all the people are joined on, namely their own right of self-destiny and their own sovereignty in the Republic of Panama.
So you're saying there is no dispute within the country
on this issue? There's no dispute on that.
Issue.
Just don't let's give it to the communists. Now, the communists were the only ones down there objecting to it when I was there in August. They were absolutely opposed because they knew they would lose their own issues. See, that's where we're in Vietnam. We didn't have that nationalism issue. We couldn't engender it. As you say, we couldn't impose democracy on those people. By gosh, that commie crowd sure did.
Well, why then do we hear so much about the huge communist presence and its influence in Panama among those who are particularly critical of the treaty?
That's a total misconception and absolutely distorted picture. Let me put it this way, neither the United States nor Russia are in control, or the Marxists or the communists. But if anybody's in control, I'm going to cite a few things to give you a picture. It's the United States influence down there. As I say, we not only built the canal, we built the people. We were their police force until 1936. We actually took over into Chiriquí province, the island of Tobago, not just the canal and everything else, and we had big old ugly American. We did anything we wanted to down there, and there wasn't anything. They had separate drinking fountains like we had in the South. Right up at the end of the 40s and the early 50s, we had segregation. And we had it with our own people taking over and segregating the nationality, namely the Panamanians. Now, what we've done is come with private free enterprise and constructed the country in our own image with a president and a Congress and a business community. We've trained our National Guard. Torrijos himself was a major in the National Guard, trained at Fort Sherman. And they've had around 750 university and college graduates within the United States from the Republic of Panama on an average of every year. Lacus, the president, he went to Wesleyan College and then Texas Tech. He spent 6 years in Texas. Nicholas Barletta, the economic minister, is a graduate of NC State. He roomed right next to Governor Hunt when Governor Hunt was a student there, and then studied under Milton Friedman in Chicago, in the University of Chicago. And so the Friedman economics. You've got 17 U.S. banks. There are 80 free world banks down there. It's a private free enterprise enclave, and the Soviet doesn't even have an embassy. Now, there's a major general retired here in the city of Columbia, categorically gets up and says, I spent 3 tours in Panama, and I know what I'm talking about, and the biggest embassy down there is the Soviet embassy. The Republic of Panama has never recognized the Soviet Union. There's no ambassador from Panama to Moscow, and there's no ambassador from Moscow to Panama. So you get these things about Marxist-controlled country. Now, that's exactly what it would be if we turn these treaties down, because they'd come in like they did in Vietnam and these other places, take over the nationalism issues, see the gringos, see the powerful United States. They're trying to, by gosh, in imperialism, take your country over, and the only way you're going to get freedom, they'd talk to students, the students would respond, and they'd lead the way with Torrijos, I think, then against all of us.
Senator, what then accounts for the tremendous domestic backlash we are seeing against ratification of the treaty, if these arguments don't hold water?
Well, I think in context, let's call it a front lash.
All right,
And the reason I call it a front lash is they started before we could even get a treaty. The American Conservative Union, and I now say the Republican Party, it's a political issue with them. Why? Because I got a letter not only from Governor Reagan, but Bill Brock, the national chairman of the Republican Party, sends me a jointly signed letter. And at their Republican policy meetings in New Orleans, they took an official position against these treaties. So they think they got a good political issue going. You've got something about the Committee for an Effective Congress, another group, and they've got a direct mailer and everything else. It's 13 miles down the road out of Washington, D.C. And they all organized and even started with Jim Allen in the United States Senate with a committee on the separation of powers, constitutional subcommittee for the separation of powers. And you know what they did? They had hearings in June. Now, we didn't even effectuate the treaty until August. They started, that's why I call it front lash, with hearings in June and bringing in admirals and others to oppose the treaty, and started their onslaught in August. So at the time they consummated that treaty in August, they had already had letters grinding and everything else, and people became alarmed. They said, heavens above, what's going wrong with that crazy Congress and Carter administration and everything else like that? They just couldn't understand the giveaway.
Are you saying that it's primarily a psychological issue then for us as opposed to being a real issue? It's a misstatement of facts, it's a misstatement of history, it's a misstatement of the principles and the hopes and aspirations of us as a nation. It's a disgrace. And the truth of the matter is, it seared my conscience after I'd listened to it all and found out legally I'd written a newsletter last year, we didn't have the sovereignty, and now I know we don't want it. And now, having gone down there and visited and talked and everything else and trying to determine what's for the best interest of my country, I can quote so many, Admiral Holloway. He's the chief of naval operations. He's born on Sullivan's Island in Charleston. He's an Annapolis man and a hero, aircraft carrier pilot. He knows defense, and he's 100% for these treaties as being in the best interest of the country.
And all the Joint Chiefs saw, and the past 4-star General O'Mare and General Porter, who were the Southern commanders down there historically, said this is in the best interest of our country, where we've got a permanent neutrality, a right militarily to go in, and the only way we can maintain the security is to have a friendly people. If we turn the canal down, if we try to keep this 10-mile strip of separate courts and ugly Americanism, as I call it, and everything else of that kind, keep all the jobs. I got 2 Panamanians, are good jobs, the shipboat captains. They get paid more than the runner operator of this TV station, almost any TV station in America. So they've got the plush jobs and everything else, and we've got to cut that out and say, all right, let's go in with the new treaty. How are we going to pay for all these bases and everything we got down there? We're not paying, you know, for them to take it. That's another misnomer. The truth is it increased the tolls. Now, we do pay in Greece. We do pay in Spain. That's taxpayers have to pay for those bases down there. Let's look at Greece. In Greece, we pay $700 million over a 4-year period, or $175 million a year.
Have we any?
We're only paying $70 million in Panama from.
Have we any security, though, that by increasing the tolls, we will not, in effect, be turning away some of the traffic? There is a discussion of the fact that the canal is for many obsolescent.
It is.
Obsolete, rather.
Well, it turn away our aircraft carriers, and when you turn away the mothership, all the support vessels, the destroyers, and everything else, they can't go through the canal and send the aircraft carrier by itself around the horn. They got to keep with that mother vessel. Take the supercarriers bringing oil. You can't get any supercarrier bringing North Slope oil from Alaska to the East Coast. So what we really want to try to do is get a sea level canal, and it could well be by the year 2000 all of this will be moot. For the simple reason that we know now from an interoceanic canal study report in 1970 that the only feasible routes, this is a quote, the only feasible routes are 10 and 14 in the Republic of Panama. Now, there's another little issue there. They say, well, we contracted and said we wouldn't negotiate anywhere else but in Panama. That was something we asked for. We didn't want Panama to negotiate with anybody else. They said, well, we want that same kind of binder on you. We said, we're glad to do it because we've studied in Nicaragua. We had under William Jennings Bryan, you know, we had a former Congressman, William Jennings Bryan Doan. We got to give him a little part on this program. William Jennings Bryan was Secretary of State in 1914, and he got us a treaty in perpetuity to build a sea level canal through Nicaragua. We found by 1970 that it was an irritant. They don't want any foreign ownership in their country either. So they said it was an irritant. Can't we do away and repeal that treaty? So they came back up, and in 1971, 6 years ago, by a vote of 66-5, Senator Dole voted to do away with that treaty. Now, Senator Dole's on the Senate floor saying, oh, we ought to go through Nicaragua. Why did we do it? They hadn't even remembered that we did that affirmatively. And we only want to build a canal, sea level route, either through 10 or through Route 14 in the Republic of Panama. Nicaragua would displace 370,000 people. Back in 70, cost $11 billion, and they have earthquakes. We don't have any earthquakes in the Republic of Panama.
Senator, what guarantee do we have then that the political government in Panama is today stable enough to make this treaty not a moot question? After
No one
all,
can guarantee that. I don't want to contend that I can. We know it's been stable under Torrijos since he took over in 1968.
But that's less than 10 years ago.
That's right. And, well, that's lasted longer than Richard Nixon. And he had to leave almost in impeachment to the West Coast. And I don't think, you know, compare the stability of the United States with that.
But the government, as opposed to
that's right.
the leadership.
I know one way to
question.
destabilize that, to stabilize it on the wrong side, and that is turn these treaties down. They'll get some kind of real dictatorial government that'll come in there and they'll nationalize it. And who'll be with us? Under the new treaties, we've got all the Latin countries plus the Republic of Panama pledged to it. Under no treaty at all, they could call in Castro and start lobbing shells into the zone. We only pay them $2.8 million.
Let's talk a little bit about the national defense aspects of the canal. Specifically, what are those aspects for us as Americans?
We phase out our different bases. We've got some 14 bases down there right now, training bases, you know, jungle warfare school and everything else of that kind. They're rather small ones, but they've been important ones to us. But we phase those out over the 23-year period to the year 2000, and then we've got the real authority under the treaty itself. You know, to defend the canal, you don't wait till something comes in like the Navy. There's no real Navy in the Panama Canal zone. There's a captain is the highest rank and 600 communication people and everything else like that. If I'm Chief of Naval Operations, I'll meet any Navy on either side 200 and 300 miles before they get to the Panama Canal, or the Air Force is going to meet them before they can get there. So other than the internal security, we need none right down there, and so we've got the rights that we need if there's any jeopardy to that canal after the year 2000 under the treaty.
The other question that seems important is how vital is the canal itself to the economy, the health of Panama?
I think it's vital to the health. Well, it is Panama. It's vital to our economy and health. I've never contended otherwise. It's only about the most up-to-date figures MARAD on yesterday afternoon said in Washington, 12% of the international trade of the United States goes through. So somebody says less than 10% is a State Department figure. Let's use a 10% figure. The fact is, even that 10% is fundamental important to a lot of the things still going through. So I don't want to try on my position to say I'm doing it because it is obsolete. We cannot get the other things now. Panama, we not only have the canal, which is its backbone, its economy, but we've got the two deep water harbors at Cristobal and Balboa. And here we've gotten those in the zone, and we take our, not only the canal, but the economy. The total economy is wrapped up in this zone. So this is the most important thing. This has held the country back. We hold them back. Some of the opponents say, oh, we've treated them good, they got a per capita income and everything else. We paid the country of France for the rights more than we paid the Republic of Panama for the real estate.
Some of the opponents also say, all right, fine, we need to renegotiate a treaty, but let's do one that still allows us some type of lease in perpetuity. What, from your seat, would be the effect of that type of...
They don't understand the problem. No kind of lease in perpetuity in anybody's land in this day and world. When Charles de Gaulle, under our NATO treaty, where we had leases for bases in France, says, get out, we got out. We didn't have any argument, because he's big enough to really make some trouble with us. When the Egyptians says, get out of our canal, they got out. And as each country comes and attains its own nationality and say, get out, the foreigners are going to have to leave. And that's fundamental to the American way. That Declaration of Independence, as that shot went ringing around the world. And
the American way for Americans, but not necessarily
well, it's for everybody else now. That's why we're trying to extend it, and we're proud to extend it on that particular basis.
Senator, what is the likelihood that this treaty will not be ratified?
Well, as time goes and the people learn, all the polls show that everybody now begins 60% approve. And it is on the increase. The momentum, the direction, the approval is coming our way. I would say as of tonight, nope, it wouldn't get the 2/3 vote. It would get a majority, but not the 2/3 necessary. I would hope after the Armed Services Committee has hearings, after the Foreign Relations Committee completes its hearings in January, after the various members who have scheduled trips in January come back and what have you, and the public learns and knows, and you're going to have a good debate, I understand, on January the 13th with Governor Ronald Reagan and William Buckley on public broadcast. I think the people will learn and make their own judgments. I think we'll pick up the necessary 2/3 vote by, I would say, sometime in late February, and we'll vote at that time or early March, I hope.
It seems to me that this entire discussion centers around changing an American philosophical approach to our modern day existence in the world. Are you suggesting that by pulling away from our colonial vestiges that we are perhaps not taking a back seat in world affairs, but allowing that we are
taking a front seat in human rights, in the greatness of America? If we can't stand for that, we can't stand for anything as Americans. That's our, that we never have. When we took the Philippines, when we freed Cuba, we gave Cuba back. We never have really wanted to be imperialistic or exact our way of life or tell anybody or control anybody's land. It was a good thing at the turn of the century. The Panama Canal has worked extremely well for Panama and for the United States. But now as we look and work with this friendly country, the people down there are very friendly to the United States. They're not hostile or Marxist-controlled country, pure nonsense. As we work with them, here's a good, deliberate situation and procedure that's been worked out by our Joint Chiefs particularly for a 23-year period in an orderly way to turn it over. We don't know whether Torrijos will be there in the year 2000, or I'll be here, or President Carter, or any of us will be living. But this is a good way for a mature, leading, free nation like the United States of America, the hope of the free world, to conduct itself in this particular affair.
In this leadership role, then, can we assume that we will see this type of attitude carried out in our relations with other countries? Say, could we expect then a lessening of influence in countries in South Africa or among emerging African nations?
I think we increase our influence. I think by the end of the Nixon administration, we had zero influence in Africa. We were on the wrong side. They tried to get us in on the wrong side in Angola, and some of these same folks are arguing about Angola. We don't have time to get into Angola, but I can tell you right now they were putting us in on the wrong side, and that was another Vietnam. But in any event now, under President Carter, under Ambassador Andrew Young, we're putting that same foot forward. Some people are irritated by it. You can't go around and tell others how to live. We're not doing that. But we're saying with respect to people determining their own destiny, the majority rule, and the people are going to have to vote and everything else, and you can't take in an almost totally black country a white minority control in either Rhodesia or South Africa. We believe in everybody's civil rights, the right to vote and express themselves and determine their own destiny. And if we can't stand for that in the United States, we can't stand for it in South Africa. And if we do, we must stand for that in Egypt and in Israel and in South Africa and in Mozambique. And that's why you see the Soviet being invited out of Somalia. That's why you see the Soviet losing in Egypt. I think we're beginning under President Carter to pick up strength all around the world, because we couldn't explain our policy under Foster Dulles and couldn't explain our policy under Kissinger and Nixon. We're beginning to explain it now and openly explain it and get adherence to it and support for it and respect for it the world around.
Senator, we only have about 2 minutes remaining, and I want to ask you something that's certainly very dear to those of us who work in public broadcasting. Because of your position on the Commerce Committee, and right now at a time when our very basis is being examined, what are your hopes for the future of public broadcasting in this country?
Continued success, expansion, more financing and help and everything else from the federal government. I don't want to eliminate the private participation, because I want Henry Crofton running the programs, not Fritz Hollings running them. And the leader and manager of this station right here is a national leader. And we're going to follow his leadership and others in public broadcasting, improve the worth, I mean acceptance now, and the audience ratings and everything else has now improved itself. We just don't want to build up a big bureaucracy, and we don't want to have censorship, and you're not going to build up a fourth network band. We just can't go into the billions, but we can certainly give it greater financial support.
Senator, is it possible for us to gain continued governmental funding and things of these sorts without also gaining perhaps a little undue influence in the programming?
Nope, no one. They had that during the Nixon administration. Remember, trying to hold up the budget.
Absolutely.
Because they were trying to take Bill Buckley off or Bill Moyers off, and we fought that out over on the congressional side in the Capitol there, and we withheld, and now I don't think you've got that influence out of the White House, and you certainly don't have it in Congress. We're not trying to tell them how to program at all.
Senator, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching this edition of 730. I'm Beryl Dacre saying do have a pleasant evening.